It all began in March of 1850 when the Commonwealth of Kentucky issued a charter for the company to build a railroad between Louisville and the Tennessee state line in the direction of Nashville. With the charter signed and put into motion, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad was born. Nearly a decade later, the first train operated all the way from Louisville to Nashville, joining the two namesake cities forever. The 187-mile railroad was now complete. Scheduled trains began running a few days later, and with the exception of war, fire, and several floods, trains have been running on the original route ever since. Nicknamed the Old Reliable for its long-standing legacy of consistent customer service, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad would grow and prosper for over a century, becoming one of the nation's most important Class I railroads. Now remembered as one of America's finest railroads of the past, the spirit of the Old Reliable is still alive thanks to the Louisville and Nashville Railroad Historical Society.
History never says goodbye. It just says, I'll see you later. The L&N Railroad Company has an amazing legacy of trackage and routes that were built well over a century ago, and those routes still carry untold millions of freight, and in some cases passenger. So the L&N still lives. If you want to learn more about the history and the legacy of this great American railroad company, whether it be in operations, motive power, rolling stock, stories from retired L&Ners who will tell you exactly the way it was back in the day, or if you want to replicate the L&N in miniature, we're the place for you.
Lets you relive the glory days, really, and for somebody like me who never actually got to see the glory days, trains coming through the same spot 70 years ago, just to me that's mind-blowing. And I think, as a younger person coming into this group, that's the biggest draw. And I would imagine a lot of people would have that same sort of draw as well, because you get used to seeing it one way, but to be able to go back in time and see it how it was is just truly, it's mind-blowing.
L&N was beginning to merge with other railroads, and then shortly we would lose our identity. And of course, I think if anybody who's lived on the L&N or knows the railroad loves its tradition, a century plus of history that was created by the railroad and its service to the South.
Hi, I'm Charlie Buccola from Louisville, Kentucky. I am a member of the Louisville and Nashville Historical Society. The society, like most others, have an annual convention. They'll have clinics or little talks where you'll go through history or things that the average member might not be acquainted with. I'm a believer in continuous education, that there's always stuff you can learn. So even if you think you're a pretty sophisticated rail fan, there's lots of nuance to the industry that you can always pick up from the pros. The people that you'll encounter are uniformly good people. The magazine's very readable, and the editors try to cover different parts of the system as they go through the year. For those whose key interest is modeling, they're certainly available now more than ever, a lot of information from the society. The people who are interested in accurately depicting on their models the L&N and its sister railroads can find quite a lot of information at their fingertips now that can be quite helpful.
A lot of fun and the interesting people you meet, the trips that you take, plus what you can glean from being around people who have lived and worked on the railroad their entire careers. I've learned a tremendous amount about passenger operations on the system because I didn't grow up in an era when I was riding passenger trains right around Louisville.
Hi, I'm Jeff Kuebler. I modeled the L&N in 1955 on the Eastern Kentucky and CC divisions. Some of the scenes that I saw that I liked the most were the Red River Bridge, just because it was big and huge and just an awesome scene. Winchester, Kentucky with the C&O, and also Patio Tower. There's key scenes on the L&N that I, as a modeler, wanted to replicate a time and a place in history. And those are the things that I set out 30 years ago to do. The L&N Society has really helped me do that. The materials that they have access to and can get you actually make this the easy part of the process is studying it. You don't really even have to go there. It doesn't look like anything that it was in the 1950s anyway. So my point of going there is purely out of nostalgia if I do choose to go there. But I can go back in time any day I want to through the materials of the L&NHS. That way I can model each scene specifically down to the trees, the river, everything in there, the buildings. The equipment, today is a little bit easier because there's so much equipment mass produced, but the actual scenes that make it L&N is what I'm trying to replicate. Basically the whole roster that I have is replicated from society publications and books and things like that I've gotten access to, mostly through the L&NHS.
Naturally we couldn't preserve the railroad because it isn't ours to preserve, but something of the history and something of the lore and the legends of the railroad certainly are worth preserving, and the contribution of the railroad in helping develop the South, which is exactly what the L&N did after the Civil War. We were the first railroad during the Reconstruction years in bringing good transportation and assisting industries trying to get back on their feet.
With a rich history as one of America's greatest railroad companies, the L&N lives on through the Louisville and Nashville Railroad Historical Society. Consider joining L&NHS today to become part of a growing fellowship of enthusiastic rail fans who share your interest in the L&N's history, operations, equipment, and employees. To learn more about the Louisville and Nashville Railroad, or to become a member of the Louisville and Nashville Railroad Historical Society, visit lnrr.org. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad Historical Society, preserving the old reliable for generations to come.